Had a fun day in the office already. Let's open this Audit and Risk Committee. I get confused these days. Sometimes I call them Risk and Assurance or Assurance and Risk Committees. If I confuse you, my apologies. Any conflicts of interest for items of decision on the meeting? None. Apologies. Got any apologies? I think got an apology from Grant Smith. Any other apologies? Independent. He's a Kiwi. Can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor.
Tom.
Thank you, Tom. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Carried. Public forum. There is none. Items not on the agenda, Mr. Chief Executive. I haven't been advised any. Well done. Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting held, seems a lifetime ago, 23rd of November. Can I have a mover, please? I'll move. Seconded. Thank you, Tim. Any discussion?
Yep.
Councillor Betts.
Just a correction, Chair, on page 5.2 with regards to the agreement for Audit, it says that it's in its first year, it's in its second year. On 5.2.
Thank you.
Staff advised the term of the agreement was 6 years and that it was in its first year. It's actually in its second year because it started in 2021 June. So that's
exactly.
That's correct.
That's correct.
That's
Thank you. Thank you.
But the other thing that was corrected with that is that it's a 3-year funding agreement. The MOU is for 6 years, but the funding is done in the LTP timeframe. So it's only 3 years funding.
So there's in the MOU, 3 years as passed in the LTP are confirmed, and there's indication that there's the following 3 years with the confirmation that council makes the decisions around the funding confirmed as part of the LTP cycle. Yes.
Okay. So technically the agreement is for 6 years, but the funding is only 10 based on the LTP.
Yeah, indeed. So it's an acknowledgement of the fact
So
that
3 years funding, 6 year MOU.
Yep.
also on that report 5.5, request is made to have a metric that set out the number of site visits, etc. I'm just wondering if Ben could give us an update on that, which I'm sure nothing's probably progressed since then because it wasn't that long ago, but is that still the intention?
Can I just say, yeah, can I hold, I've got that question as well, but I think we do it when we do Ben's report because all we're doing is the accuracy of the minutes.
Okay.
Just give you 5 minutes to think about it, Ben. Okay, any other corrections to the minutes? So noting that minor change, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Service provision report. Corin, take the report as read. Are there any highlights? I know we've got various representatives here.
Indeed, so just noting the report has read that both Nuku Ora and Aratoi have reported and are achieving well. We've got Sarah here from Aratoi, and I think we've got Nuku Ora just coming in online.
Thank you.
Sarah, is there anything you'd like to talk to?
Page 18.
Yes, is everyone sitting here?
If you can probably move forward and sit on the end of the, there we can see your smiling face.
Yes. Kia ora everyone, thank you for having me. First I wanted to acknowledge the floods and the impact it's having on our community in East and Wairarapa, and while Aratoi doesn't have any conservators on staff, we do have contacts with people who are and taonga conservators, so if any of your constituents or any of your organisations have any conservation work or any advice that they want, we at Audit are happy to facilitate contacts and help in any way we can.
Thank you.
First up, it's looking at our budgets, which are all on pretty much on track. Few variances, of course, with unexpected costs like the like our power costs have gone down, continuing to stay down because of the solar project, which we're happy about. But that also means that there are tempered by OPEX costs going up, so it means that it's very balanced in that way. We are meeting most of our targets, and that for the year we are meeting 37% of our self-generated income, and self-generated is often split up for us between commissions from from sales, from venue hire, as opposed to sponsorships and corporate funding that we receive. If there's anything anyone particularly wants to know about the budget, feel free to ask and we can go into detail. I'm just very aware of the time that you've all got, but we're happy with how the balance is looking for the financial year, and it will come at a fairly even keeled position. Our other key reporting functions are all on track. We're having some very popular shows that highlights the Wairarapa artists, including Kaitahitanga and King Street, the Breadcraft Schools exhibition, which had hundreds of children's art and was one of our most well-attended events of the last quarter, as well as some other very exciting exhibitions, such as Little Jewels, which is always a great way of showing the support that Audit has from our local arts community. Some very good events attendance as well, and a big highlight for us in the last quarter was definitely winning the Business Innovation, the Harcourt's Hamel Realty Award Innovation Award at the Wairarapa Awards, which I think is a great indication of the work that the board and the team at Audit have done to make our little gallery and museum punch well above its weight and use our funding and our resources in interesting and dynamic ways. And we also received a bronze award from Qualmark, which opens up a lot of opportunities for us as well. Had lots of volunteers support us through this time. We really rely on them, and got some very exciting planning coming up for exhibitions and like that. So if anyone has any specific questions, I'm happy to talk to anything in the report.
Okay, are there any specific questions of Sarah? Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, just wonder if you could tell us how many, and it's not really your organisation, how many in the Friends organisation?
Do you mean on the board, although they're not the board?
Yeah, I suppose I just thought that the contribution was fairly light.
Yes, I know for them it's been as for a lot of people, their ability to contribute has been impacted by COVID, and that they've had a number of bus tours and things like that which they'd normally run in a year, which have been more lightly attended than normal. But we have made expectations of them, knowing at the beginning of the year what our expectations for their contributions will be for the next financial year, and they are planning fundraising around meeting those financial contribution expectations.
And do you report on roughly how many visitors go through the place?
From the reporting that structure that I've been given, that isn't, but I do have access to those numbers. So if this committee would like that added to the report, then that's certainly something we can do.
Yeah, I find it useful. Yeah.
I think, my view is that we've got a service level agreement which has got KPIs, and I think we should be predominantly looking at those KPIs that have already been agreed by council as the primary focus in terms of our reporting. Any other comments, questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You can go.
And we should hopefully have Michelle from Nuku Audit online who can speak to the Nuku Audit reporting. Can you hear us, Michelle?
Tēnā koe, yes, I can hear you. I'm actually going to take the opportunity. We've had a change of plan in our organisation or calendars. So I'm going to introduce you to Jamie Milne and Andrew Leslie, our new Chief Executive, who will lead the reporting. And Chloe's online as well for us, who's in Masterton. And we'll be here to answer any questions you have. Jamie.
Can we just hold 2 seconds? 2 seconds while we put you on the big screen if we can, Harriet? No, it doesn't. Unfortunately, at the moment, you're on a postage stamp.
So are you for us, so.
Yeah. Don't worry about Harriet. Oh, no. No, it doesn't matter. All right, sorry for the post. At least we can hear you clearly. Thank you.
Kia ora. Tēnā koutou katoa, tēnei te mihi ki a koutou, ki te harakoa, ki te tūtaki i a koutou. Thank you very much for having us here today. Called Jamie Milne, Toka Wingua. My role for our region is Partnerships Manager. We would like to start just with an acknowledgement for your communities that have been affected in the recent weather events. It's been a big challenge up and down. Many of our communities are very conscious, particularly some of Masterton District Council's communities. So thoughts there with you all in your affected communities. I also like to acknowledge this is my first time in front of an audit and risk committee. So any form of protocol that I may miss, please know. I'd like to introduce, obviously, Chloe, as has been said, Michelle Hayward, General Manager of Partnerships, and also introduce Andrew, our new CEO, who will take over from here briefly.
Right, thanks, Jamie. Kia ora koutou. Ko Andrew Leslie, tuku ingoa. Started Nuku Audit as Chief Executive just before Christmas, so still pretty new in the seat. Come with over sort of 20 years experience in community sport and rec in various roles, and a number of those are actually working for local authorities. Last 11 years, I was Chief Executive of Recreation in Aotearoa, so I guess I come to the organisation with quite a broad view of physical activity, and I hope to sort of bring that perspective into all the good work that the audit does. Certainly that sort of that broad focus was what attracted me to the audit and the work that we do, right throughout the region. And within that sort of the aspirations of the audit strategy to really work hard at a community level to enhance wellbeing, something that attracted me to this role. So really keen to build the relationship with Masterton District Council. Very keen to work together as we sort of look into the future. Something that I just wanted to sort of make a note of today that certainly we reference in terms of our strategic thinking is the Sport New Zealand Futures work, and coming out of that, the Hawaii Ho program, which I'm not sure you're familiar with, but it's a Sport New Zealand program which is about supporting initiatives that are really lined up with this futures thinking. So it's something to bear in mind, and something maybe to weave into our discussions as we move ahead together. So yeah, great to meet you, and really good to be here today. So kia ora.
Thank you, Andrew. I'll just go through a few of the highlights at a high level from our report. I'm very pleased to announce the newly created position of General Manager of Māori Partnerships, Pembroke Chambers. His role is to provide a strategic direction, lead the implementation of programs that contribute to an increase in outcomes for Māori. This will be in your community alongside Rangatane and Ngāti Kahanunu, and Pim will be engaging with those communities and what has been and over the next 6 months. So we'll have more information for your team at the 12-month reporting on progress there. We've also had some significant success with the Healthy Active Learning program. This is a school-based program in your community. We have 10 schools in the Wairarapa, of which 7 are in Masterton District Council's area. The back end of last year was very much on workshops with teachers in your community, getting their plans ready for implementation this year. And from our colleague Darren, he said that the engagement with those schools is really right up there and really positive. It's been some good progress there. Chloe's been working alongside the regional sports organisations in your community. There has been a bit of disconnect post the COVID time, so just getting together with them, finding out their priorities in your community, seeing where support can happen across the range of services that Nuku Ora provides. This includes coffee clubs, linking in, as I just alluded to, other parts of the business, and that's going from strength to strength. The other one, which I'm a bit more familiar with, some of my team look up the Tūmanawa Active Aotearoa funding. So within your community, we've had some particular success working alongside Corin and his team to get activations happening through skateboarding, particularly down at the new skate park facility, through also some of the schools and the Healthy Active Learning. We identified probably 2/3 of the way through last year. We didn't have as much engagement with Masterton and the Wairarapa in Tūmanawa as we would like. So we've been engaging in a program to get more quality applications through the Tūmanawa system. And whilst we're reporting it in the full 12 months, there has been some good progress, including with your friends up the road at Te Oriori Marae through Rangatane. So that's been a really neat success, but we will report on that in full. We're happy to answer any questions that your team may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge Darren Houston, who works for you guys. He's worked at the school where I work with the Move Well resource, and the quality of that resource is fantastic. He's done professional development with staff throughout 2022, and he was really, really good. Absolutely high quality facilitator. And also just another thing for Darren, the connection between, with the skateboard park as well, his connecting on board with Lakeview School as well led to us, well, that school receiving thousands of dollars worth of resources and a quality skateboard program in the school. So thank you for that. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Right, any other questions, comments? Thank you very position. No, that's placed the right way with the cameras. Yeah, up there, yeah. Different room, different place here. I can't quite see them on the screen. Thank you very much for your report. No further questions, I think. Thank you very much for your time and your report and your good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, team. See ya.
So don't run away, Corin, because we haven't quite finished your report. So just before we do, we've got a recommendation on page 18. There's no further questions of Corin. The recommendation can on page 18. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Bex. Councillor Bex. I'll second. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Corin.
Thank you, Chair.
Our next report is Destination Wairarapa report, page 30.
Once again, we have Anna, General Manager from Destination Wairarapa, to here to answer any questions anyone may have. Nothing particular to highlight in the report beyond we continue to see the recovery post-COVID, particularly the standout figure is the electronic card transactions is actually above where we were in the same time
Are there any highlights that you want to bring, Anna, in terms of the report?
Kia ora koutou katoa. I mean, that's excellent news considering the environment that tourism finds itself in. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have for the end of that quarter, but I just wanted to touch on a little update about what's been happening recently. You know, with the terrible flooding and the effects that it's had to our northern neighbours further up the east coast, it's also had quite a devastating effect on the tourism industry here, and that's not quite so obvious, I think, to many people. For the Wairarapa, one of the iconic places is the lighthouse, Castle Point. It's the one on the news, and it's the place that when we did Colmar Brunton research a few years ago, people who hadn't visited the region, is the place that people most recognise with the Wairarapa. So to have it cut off in the community of Tanui, who we've just recently spending time with developing some work around their tourism product development, is pretty devastating for the East Coast. As you all know, but I just want to acknowledge the hard work of the council workers and other community support services who've done so well to help get people connected out there. But on top of that, we also had cancellation of the Wings Over Wairarapa Youth Festival, which for us is a massive economic impact on the region. From this tomorrow through to Monday, our region was full. Over the Saturday and Sunday of the weekend, it was more than full. Those visitors aren't coming in anymore, and we are struggling to let them know that Wairarapa is actually still open, and we do need that business, but we have to be mindful of being tone deaf to the neighbours next door. And you will see probably the impact of that on our neighbours, particularly Masterton District Council in the next quarter.
Thank you. Councillor Banks.
Through the chair, hi Anna. I've just got a question. I'm just curious as to how you sift out tourism electronic card transactions from general card transactions. That's a very good question. It's one that MB takes the lead on that one. So Ministry of Business and Innovation, they do all the electronic card transaction work. I believe that it's based on somebody who's outside of their region. So the cards, when you use your credit card, it can tell when you're not using it in a usual area. And it can also be as advanced in the fact that if you live in Masterton and work in Wellington, for example, it won't track you as a visitor to Wellington or a visitor to Masterton. It's based on certain timeframes and your usual spending pattern. So it's pretty smart, a little bit terrifying, but that's how it works. Thank you.
So if I'm coming once a quarter, then it will pick me up as a visitor, or?
Well, I don't know whether it probably would put you as a visitor, but then because you're coming regularly, maybe it won't.
Yeah. Depends how regularly they get me here. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. Okay. One more. Yep, and then.
Oh, just one more question. You make note, this is to do with the product development and capability building on page 34. You talk about a one-year STAT funded contract. So my first question I've got for you though is what is STAT? But the other thing you talk about our product offering pre and post conferences. I didn't understand what sort of what product offering you were talking about. Sure. So STAT is Strategic Tourism Assets Protection Program. Over the last 3 years, we've had roughly, exactly $800,000 from the state, topped up for the region for three things. Domestic marketing, and then in the last year is international marketing once the borders open. Secondly, it was for capability building in the region and product development. And the third one was the creation of the destination. So that money was contracted to MB. All 31 RTOs were given a portion of money, and it's based on how much income we received from the councils. So obviously Auckland got significantly more than we did. And that money was used to make sure that we as a region reinvented tourism, I think was the key word that Stuart Nash used. And it was at his instruction around the destination management plans, the creation of those. And it's things like Dark Skies funding report, multi-tourism strategy that we've completed,
a number of other initiatives that we've been able to achieve because of that funding. It really has been a gift. Also, a lot of the advertising and above the line, meaning the stuff that you see in papers or in magazines, etc. A lot of that advertising we've been able to do in the last couple of years in order to attract people to the region and not have them bypass us and go up State Highway 1. And I think that funding has really assisted us with growing our numbers over that period of time. So that's what STAT funding is, and it runs out in 30th of June. Part of that was product development. So a product, if you think of it in the FMCG or fast moving consumer good, if you buy a bar of chocolate, you develop the packaging and develop the product inside it, what it tastes like, flavours, it's margins on that, who the wholesaler is. There's a whole raft of things that go into creating that product. For tourism, it's similar, but it's not really a fair representation of what it is. It talks about how you get to market and the packaging of the product, but it's generally services that are packaged together, not something that is tangible as a chocolate bar. And we don't have a lot of products here in the Wairarapa. As an example, when I use Castle Point, you can go out to Castle Point, have an amazing day with your family. You can take a picnic on the beach, take a wonderful walk, meet some of the locals, but the most investment you might have made into that area is an ice cream from the shop. That's all. And that's the area that we need to develop, is people coming together providing services. So as an example, again, using Castle Point, it could be somebody who runs a surf lessons, and they might pick them up, some kids or people interested in learning to surf here in Masterton, perhaps from the Copthorne, take them out for the day, provide them with lunch, perhaps provided by a local retailer, do the surf lessons, maybe give them a t-shirt that they've got from somebody local, come back, drop them off. And that product could be $250, for example, per person. And that's investing back into the communities that are offering the service, and therefore, obviously, their lives get richer, have more money to spend at the dairy and buy as many ice creams as they want to.
Thank you.
Turning an ice cream into $250, yeah. Any other, Tim? Councillor Tim?
Yeah. Thank you, Anna. With the website, what happened for it to be no longer supported?
It's so old. It's just become old and sadly redundant. And the Duplo, I think, is the supporter or the provider, the software. It's come to the point where the smart people who make those things, we're not going to no longer support that because there's fancier, flasher things that we want to support.
And can you manage the website yourself, or do you have to go through?
No, that is, in order to keep costs down, that is what we're aiming to do. So other regions, we've been looking at other RTOs and their websites, and the cost of running them over a period of time is not within our budget, or even imagine it should be in their budget. So we will be making sure that we can update it as much as possible. There'll be technical stuff we won't be able to, but on the whole, the day-to-day updating of information, business opening hours, imagery, all that sort of stuff should be done by our own team.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Now, this is going to be a completely ignorant one. On your report on page 1, you had a nice little table of your accommodation types. I'd like to know how many of your accommodation establishments are actually in Masterton District compared with.
Actually, that information I can't tell you because it's secret.
Oh, okay.
It's simply because Masterton, there is a critical mass there, and therefore, if they just reported on Masterton, they'll tell us who it was.
Oh.
But when you look over the Wairarapa as a whole, because there's so few, it's a confidentiality.
I wasn't actually looking at the number of average stays or anything, just the actual number, potentially the capacity.
Yeah. I don't actually know that information myself.
Okay.
Yeah,
You're not collecting, doesn't matter. Okay.
Sorry.
I could probably go around and count up.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, and that's the problem too, is that the largest provider, we all know who that is, probably also the numbers that attribute to them. It's information that we probably shouldn't know. So
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, the other issue too is in terms of number of establishments, do you count Airbnbs and
No,
homestays, etc. So
no, this is only commercial accommodation.
yeah.
And you'll notice, I think there's 1 or 2 dropped off.
Mm.
That's because they are emergency accommodation places.
I wondered. Any other questions? Thank you, Anna. She is very shame about the event this coming weekend. My motelly is not very happy.
No, no.
Mate. Right. Any other discussions? Can I have a mover then for the, thank you, Anna. Then mover for the recommendation on page 30. Councillor Beth, I think is going to do that since she asked most of the questions. Second, Councillor, okay. Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. Thank you again. Item 5.4, page 36, non-financial reporting. We'll take, while you're coming up, we'll take your report as read. Are there any key highlights or lowlights you want to bring to our attention?
Probably just the report is similar to the Q1 report, and that the challenges that we're facing are similar challenges in the water space in particular. While complaints were down in Q2, overall our complaints for both stormwater and wastewater currently at the halfway point are actually exceeding the whole result for the previous year. So that's just a trend that's been noted. But other than that, continuing positive sort of results in the community facilities and activities as we start to recover post-COVID. Well, no, not post-COVID, but in the next iteration.
And this last week's events probably haven't contributed to the overall
No, this report's as at 31st of December, so that might be
I'm not expecting you to crystal ball at this stage. Yeah. Any questions? Thank you. Question?
Would that be the case for under the heading environmental climate change? Would that be because this report was reported earlier than Cyclone Gabriel?
That clause relates to the receiving of the report, so we hadn't identified any climate or environmental changes in receiving the report. But yeah, definitely we do the next report. We might be thinking of this evidence of impacts throughout the performance measures and like that.
Okay. And my second question.
Sure. Yep.
Under the treaty consideration, you've got the considerations of patients with specific Māori arising out of the receipt of this report. Explain what those are.
To be honest, I think it's a typo. We're missing the word, so it's there and it should read that there are no considerations or implications specific to Māori outside of the report.
Thank you.
Apologies for the typo.
Any Councillor Tim?
Thank you. Got 3 questions. Thanks, Tanya. On page 42, with percentage of water loss, why is that only once a year, not say quarterly?
I believe it's the methodology. David Hopman is probably in Mike's absence better to explain the detail.
It's a BIA requirement, and it's that's how they want it.
Okay, thank you. On page 40, we've got a positive 100% customer service requests were responded to within 2 days, which is awesome. But does responded to mean addressed as well?
It depends on, sorry, I haven't got the same numbering and how to bring the report up through the agenda.
That's on page 40.
Is it, sorry, can I just, under the heading of the, sorry, is it, oh.
Page 40, it's on the first page of the tables.
Yeah, that's the in the roading section.
Roadings?
Yep.
So my understanding from the rating team is that there's response, and it depends on the complexity of the issue that they're dealing with as to when it gets resolved. But what they do is they have the urgent customer service requests, which you'll see there.
Yep.
So that's when they've been dealt with. The other one is the less urgent ones is where if it's something that's going to take longer to resolve, then it will last as it into potentially into a less urgent space.
Thank you. That's a really good result. And on page 37, just for Three Waters, later on in the report, health and safety, we talk about reputational risk in our organisation. Looking at this, the glaring one is again around stormwater. And in an earlier meeting, if I can I address Corin?
Yeah.
Just with the community development team, Corin, we see the opportunity for that team to meet with the people who are impacted by the stormwater and the sewage overflows. Instead of the councillors organising those meetings, I think it would be really effective if it came from council staff, of course supported by councillors as well, just to get that group together to let them know what tangible actions have been taken, what we're doing next, to get feedback on the 12-step, I think it was a 12-step plan that we talked about, how well that's worked. So is that something that's going to be happening for the community development team?
So I've got a conversation with Kelsey on that, but I'll connect in with Chief Executive as well, because I do think it's important that we also stay strongly connected with Mike's team in terms of like the actual physical response, so that we've got that connected. But I'll take that forward and I'll come back to you on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, just on Tim's point there, Corin, that meeting goes ahead. I think it would be really good if we had someone who could explain the systemic issue that exists.
Yeah. And that's
in layman's terms.
Yeah, and that's part of my point with Mike's team, because I think community development, they can bring the community together and they can use their engagement skills. So of course, the other bit we actually need is the people who understand what's going on, what's being done, why. So bring those together.
Thank you. And just my second question, Tanya, while facilities and parks, just with the library, in-person results, visits and physical issues. Physical visits and issues are currently tracking below the 5-year average.
Around
So our measure is based on the 5-year average, and I would suspect that it's probably because during COVID times there's been, those rates have dropped away a little bit more. There's been more increase in online engagement and interaction. Probably too early to tell where that's going to be. I don't know if you've got want to, Corin?
And I've just been doing some work on some stats actually over the last couple of days. So there's definitely, so what we're seeing this year, if the trend continues, we will end up with an increase in physical visits and online visits on the previous year. The averages and everything is skewed because of what COVID did to it, so we're kind of still pulling around on that. The other interesting stat just pulled today is around the number of issues per visit. So what we're seeing and what libraries around New Zealand are seeing is when a person visits the library, they are on average borrowing more than they were before. So we think that's a combination of people being a little bit shy about coming into public places still, like there's still that overhang. So actually minimising by borrowing more at that point. But also, of course, we've got the impact of fuel prices and those sorts of things. So people appear to be maximising their visit to borrow more at the point that they're doing that.
I think that data analysis is really, really useful if we're going to be deciding on what the future of that library is going to look like.
Absolutely.
I encourage you to gather as much of that as you can.
Yeah, that's exactly why that data's been pulled recently.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Oh, actually,
yeah.
yeah, I'd just like to reinforce that too, because while we're talking about the scope and what libraries are changing spaces, and we've talked about technology hubs and being a library, and Tim, you often talk about them being social interaction spaces. This might be a little bit of an anomaly, as you said, COVID changed things around a bit, but if physical visits go down and digital goes up, continues to climb, then the scope of what we're providing needs to be addressed at the same time, because it's changing, isn't it? And we talked today about whatever we choose to do today is not just for today, it's for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, so what does that mean in terms of the physical spaces we're providing and the changes that we might make to make those spaces more useful to the community, so more people are coming. The other thing that Tiffany's doing right now is looking at the other builds that are happening around New Zealand and the choices that the councils are making through the conversations with their community about what they provide. So we've got some good data on where trends are going, what spaces look like, what communities elsewhere have told us, as well as the fact that obviously when we get to that point, we're talking to our community to understand that. So we'll have lots of information and data to support our decisions.
And sorry, the second question I just had is, I thought the stats were interesting on the rec centre. Obviously, there's increase in appetite for swimming because that's gone through the roof by comparison, and we've got an upcoming business case study being done on the rec centre. So this information really helps when we come to evaluate what the next step is.
Absolutely.
I'd just like to get back to the point about the library and the increase of the number of books people are taking up. And we're thinking of putting charges on overdue books back on again. So maybe we could think about using the time that you can get a book out for.
So yeah, we're part of SMART, which is a consortium. So as much as possible, we try and standardise because that makes it easier in terms of the system working. But we always do look at that, and it is a balance, right, in terms of how long somebody can have something out and how quickly we seek to get that back into circulation so that the hold lists or wait lists aren't too long for the popular items as well. That's the thing that the staff are always doing.
Any other questions? I've got a couple of comments or requests for next time. And you might say, well, COVID actually screwed the scrum. But on page 36, you're saying the number of measures that were met and not met, just as a summary. Is it possible to have it the same reporting in brackets what it was 12 months ago? And of course, obviously, you know, with COVID, some of the numbers might be a bit skewish, but so we get are we better than last year in terms of our number of key measures met and not met? That would be useful. And I think I just highlight, Mr. Chief Executive, on page 37, all water supply measures were reported in the quarter two were achieved, despite the need for 3 water reforms. That's what I'll say. You don't need to respond. It's congratulations. Sorry, but tongue in cheek there, I think. What's the problem? Right. Any further discussion, questions? Can I have a mover for the recommendation on page 36? Thank you. Seconded. Oh, I got about 3. I think Tim was in by a finger. All right. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's carried. Next item, financial report, Mr. Paris.
The report is in the agenda. I will do a couple of the highlights, 6 months to date. So we're halfway through the financial year. The financial statements show a relatively large accounting surplus, and that's the reason for that is because we repay debt once a year, and that will happen in April. There's a bond maturity, and we make one repayment. So we have funded that through the year, so we look like we're running a surplus, but in fact we use that surplus in April. Other than that, the revenue numbers are significantly ahead of plan. and that revenue is from subdivision contributions, 11% more than planned. So that's around 200,000. And roading subsidies, we're 1.78 million ahead of plan. And some of that is relating to the 70% subsidy from Waka Kotahi on the storm damage repair in Kerosene Ridge and Homewood Road that were in the plan during the year. And the 70% subsidy wasn't planned for. We were expecting to be funding 43% of that ourselves. So yeah, we're doing better in that sense and less drawing on our flood damage fund for those costs. Our subsequent flood events in January and February will turn that around in a negative way. And then yeah, there's some commentary there around the roading expenditure, urban water and urban wastewater and stormwater all overspent or at 6 months to date. We're running ahead of our planned levels, our costs in delivering services and responding to issues, particularly in the water mains leaking, going out and repairing those leaks, and sewer and stormwater overflows, and the contractor going out and responding to those. Those costs are ahead of where we planned to be year to date. And that's up to December. That's without taking January and February into account. So yeah, don't expect it to improve by year end at this stage. And the capital expenditure summary there's 29% of the total budget for the year has been spent by the halfway through. And there's a number of large projects that are not started or not anticipated to happen. One of those would be Millard Ave, roading and sewer. So we're not going to get to 100%, but there are other areas in our capital program where we will overspend. And that will be in the sewer renewals area, where in the water renewals area. Last year we didn't spend all of our water pipe renewal budget because there were a number of contracts that were in process at 30th of June and were finished in the first quarter of the year. So that spend comes into this year. It looks like an overspend, but in fact it was budgeted last year. And we've done some trunk sewer relining work at a reasonably expensive job to take the trunk sewer from Nursery Road through to Homebush and shore that up, reline it. That will come from the Better Off funding that the government's given. So it wasn't in our sewer renewal program for the year. So again, will show as an overspend by year end. And then rates receivable. I was going to comment on the fact that the arrears unpaid rates from the year before is more than we had this time last year. The trend of that arrears amount is upwards. So more people not paying their rates from the year before versus about the same level of people paying their current. So people who are paying their current rates every quarter, those who are getting behind on those current rates isn't changing as a trend, but there are more people getting further behind in their old. We have sent out debt collection notices to banks and mortgagee companies, and a lot of those have paid and responded to that in January and February. So I'm expecting the next quarter arrears numbers to have come down more in line with previous quarters. But there is still an upward trend in terms of people having difficulty meeting their rates obligations. It's not significant in terms of our numbers and the numbers of people who are getting into arrears, but I think it's an indication there is an increasing level of difficulty paying rates in the community. So happy to take questions.
I've got two questions, David. First, do you tell us, please, how many portaloos we own or lease, or what's the arrangement we have with portaloos for the flooding areas down?
David Hopman's probably the one to.
Yeah,
We don't own any.
assets of operations. No, we have at our depot, we have an arrangement with the hire company. They store them there, so they're available immediately. We don't own them, but they're located on site.
We only
I
pay
believe
for them when we use them.
There's 15, I think.
Okay, no,
there.
that's good. So we only pay.
We have an arrangement. Yeah, we only pay when we use them.
Yep.
And then we
The other question is with the trying to get an easement worked out with this water pipe. Can you give me some idea how many meters that easement for, and what compensation you have to pay at the
those are ongoing discussions. So that's where there's there's different options for routes, but we're working with the property owners to discuss that.
So are they quite affable? Are they quite helpful, or are they going to screw us?
It's probably not appropriate to comment here in public.
Oh, sorry, I forgot.
It's a part of the program of works that we need to do to make that happen, and it is progressing.
Councillor Tim.
Thank you. David, with the interest expense, there's a $104,000 variance on page 58. Is that really unusual, and is that because of the unexpected, the high interest rates that were never foreseen for the last 4 years? Have we seen that sort of variance before?
Yes, it's due to higher interest rates, and that there is about 30% of our debt is on floating rates as opposed to being fixed.
Yep.
And those floating rates have increased fairly rapidly, and we didn't anticipate that in our plan. So yeah, we're incurring higher costs of interest than we expected.
What was that thing you explained once about the way we sort of, you explained the process that we have for dealing with higher interest rates rising? So that's
the use of fixed interest swaps, so that we lock in an interest rate for a period of time and pay that interest rate. We don't do that for all of our debt, but our current level is about 70%, and our policy says between 60 and 90, I think. And that locked in rate is the equivalent of a fixed rate mortgage, saying most of our debt is fixed, and some of it will be for 2 years, some of it will be for 8 years. So there's a range of and you pay more the longer you lock it in for in terms of a margin. So when I'm looking at budgeting, I'm looking at the average cost of interest across all of our different fixed rates that we've locked in, and the total debt. Then we take an average interest rate, and saying before, the annual the LTP anticipated 2.8% as our average interest. We're looking at 4.8% at the moment. So that's where interest rates move. The locking in is there to protect us from interest rate movements, but there's always a level of exposure.
Thank you.
David, just in regards to those rates arrears, I just see there in September 22, December 22. Well, first of all, are they actual figures or are they proportionate figures compared to the total rate bill?
the top graph, with the green bars, that's actual rates outstanding. So there's $1 million of unpaid rates. And our rates collection is around 50 million when you take GST and the regional council rates into account. So 1 million of 50 million annually is outstanding.
But proportionately for September 22, December 22, are we increasing our outstanding arrears, or are they just actual figures? I'm misunderstanding that.
I'm not sure.
So the figures for September 22, December 22, if we just looked at the combined figures of current year arrears and prior year's arrears in September, it's sort of up there on 1 million. December, 1 million bit.
Yeah.
My glasses on. But I'm just wondering, that they've increased. Yeah. And the December figures increased for the first time in the pattern shown there.
In the pattern.
Beyond September.
Yeah.
But have they increased proportionately to the total rate value as well as actually?
Yeah, I understand. The current year, the green bar hasn't increased. It's in proportion to the rates levied as a percentage. The bottom portion, the prior year arrears, has increased compared to this time in prior years. But some of that is the timing of our letters to the mortgagees in terms of them going out in December, and the banks didn't respond until January. But in the bottom graph, you can see the red line. That's the percentage of current arrears of the total rates levied in the current year. So the December quarter each time is consistently around 3%.
It's up a bit. Is the fact that rates have increased since June 18 up to here by probably 50%, nearly 42%, something like that. Does that mean?
Well, the top graph is actual dollars. So as a percentage of the rates levied, it's less. If our dollars stay the same and our rates that we're collecting go up, then even smaller percentages. But 1.3% is an average arrears at the 30th of June for the last 3 years in terms of the outstanding rates as a percentage of the total rates levied. So yeah, we're it's low. We're pretty good in terms of not having much outstanding rates.
Hi, yeah,
Joe.
David. Carrying on from that, and it's supplementary to the other rates arrears question. If you've exhausted every avenue that you can to recover the arrears, does the council have a process for working on a case by case to resolve, or last result? You know, what's the last?
Very much case by case, and if they've got a mortgage, we go to the mortgagee, and there's an obligation on the mortgagee to pay the rates and put it on the debt of the homeowner. If they don't have a bank loan or mortgage, then we start legal action, and that's a series of legal letters going to a court process where the court can order them to pay the rates, and if they don't pay the rates, the council can sell their property. So that's the last resort, and every case is different, and the circumstances of the people are taken into account in terms of their ability to find some arrangement where they can pay the council the rates that are outstanding, and us not have to sell their house on them. But that is the big stick that the council has at the end of the day in law, to be able to collect the rates that are levied is the sale of the property.
Not that we've ever
done that. We've come close, but people have stepped in and helped people out and made arrangements.
Not in this report, but I'd be interested at some stage to know how many properties that relates to. You know, the $1 million debt. And the reason I ask that is because we have, you know, a variation of rates across. We have rates that are $10,000 a year and rates that are $2,500 a year.
Yes.
So I'd just be interested in that sometime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm not sure if it's the May or the August
Because that's a
risk committee meeting that provided a whole lot of analysis of the numbers of properties and the average.
Because also too,
outstanding.
The rural and urban, which I think would be interesting as well.
Right. Yeah, that have arrears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions of David? I think you got off lightly, David. I haven't had mine.
You haven't had your go.
No, we didn't meet beforehand, so sorry, bad line. Actually, question probably for the chief executive. We've got some in CapEx, the easy ones. We've got some large projects other than the roading and the three waters. So you've got sports fields, housing for the elderly and the airport. How confident are you actually finishing those projects?
Within this financial year, not very.
Yeah,
The airport, we tenders are about to close on that work. Unlikely to start this financial year, so it will be next financial year.
But wet, you don't really want to start in the wet.
Summer's
pretty wet these days.
Also, they might be quite busy. Roading contractors.
It's going to be busy for 3 years.
The Millard Ave project that was to be scheduled this year, but won't be. It'll be next year. Out. And again, some of the stormwater, some of the roading renewal work, we've had to readjust as being reported to the infrastructure committee. We've had to readjust what we're doing in that roading program because of the amount of storm damage that we've had and just addressing the storm damage. And
I said excluding roading, right? Or the other question is for the other David on my left. And we've been talking about rates arrears a lot, but we see the penalty income in rates for emission is quite a reasonable movement on page 60. Do you want to comment? Is that a direct reflection on what we've just been talking about?
Yes, it is. The fact that we're ahead of our where we would expect our budget to be year to date. Anyone who has arrears is charged 10% on the instalment amount of arrears at each instalment. So where those arrears are more than we expected them to be, then the income is more than we expected. It's not a significant change, but it's
10%, David. That's material. Come on, you should know that. The other issue too I have then is, again, same page, the rates requirement, internal functions. It's got a nice little surplus of $250,000, probably offsetting some of the other. Is that?
Remember that's a net figure.
Yeah, that's net. But
in terms of internal functions, we allocate those costs across the organisation in corporate overhead.
Let me finish the question. Is that likely to be the same result for the end of the year to help pay for our other expenditure, which is referred to as likely to be over budget by end of year? That's what's actually, if you look at the rate requirement, we're actually doing pretty well overall. But if we lose some income from the net income from net result from parks, reserves, and sports field and internal functions, we could be looking for a bit of a hole at the end of the financial year.
Yes, yeah. accurate observation that the infrastructure costs are running ahead and not likely to turn around. The savings coming through the parks area, property and internal functions are likely to still be there at year end at that level, because a number of those savings are from vacant roles that are not filled through the year, and we're not going to re-spend that money even if we employ those people, and a number of those people, a number of roles have been filled recently. But the savings made in the first 6 months are banked.
What I was worried about is that, it's a timing issue, and it could be year end, all of a sudden we've got a large surprise, an unpleasant one. I'm just trying to make sure the council doesn't happen. Any other questions on the financial report? Thank you. David H and David P. We've got a recommendation on page. You got
Happy to move.
Happy to move. I'll second. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. It's carried. Thank you, David. Health and safety, Ben, page 64.
Kane Harris, Health and Safety Advisor.
Yep.
As well. I'll take the report as read, but I'll just have a few points in the executive summary I'd like to just talk through, and then Kane has a few things he'd like to talk to around some of the key events of the quarter. To answer the question first that you had, Bex, around contractor audits that was raised at the last audit and risk. We have commenced that process, and we've completed 5 audits. Kane will go through in a bit more detail around the outcome of those audits to give a verbal update. We're just working through what a metric would look like in the audit and risk report, and we wanted it to align with some of the work we're doing in the site-wise work as well. The other thing I want to mention as well around that is this quarterly report is until December, and obviously we're in late February now, so there's a bit of crossover with some of the that we're talking about today. Some of the key things that I'd like to highlight is with the more frequent weather events, that is causing some impact on the wellbeing of our staff, not just in workload, but also the service expectations around delivery. We've had some verbal feedback around the pressure is mounting, so it's a consideration as an SLT that we're aware of. We're also continuing with the sort of the culture of uncertainty a little bit around some of the change, and that's still a factor and a risk for us in the people space. The work around the 3 waters in particular is a substantial piece of work, and at the moment that is taking up some significant capacity across our operational groups. There's 5 work streams, and each group is under a lot of pressure. Luckily, we do have some project management capability at the moment that's helping in that space. I wanted to raise that we've done quite a bit of work in the wellbeing program, which Kane will cover a bit more, including a survey. And another key thing that's happened in this quarter is also the close down period that we've talked about in previous audit and risk. That was a successful process. We some metrics in the report around leave taken and so forth, and I just want to raise that was another thing that we did this quarter.
The other thing which I found surprising that we weren't expecting, which sort of caused additional operational stress, was the COVID. We had quite a bit of COVID over the Christmas period, which we weren't expecting, and that caused some significant issues. For example, in the animal services team, we had a person down, and that caused significant issues over the Christmas New Year period. We have critical services, it's hard to cover, if that makes sense. And I just wanted to also highlight that continued bench strength. I like to call it bench strength, but in certain areas of our business has caused risk. We've had a couple of unexpected absences, which in areas which are critical spaces for us, and it's identified that we need to do more in the succession planning side of things. So we've taken steps to try to build more capability in that space. And I can talk more about that if you like, but I'd like to move on to Kane, and maybe we can have questions after Kane's bit. Does that sound okay?
That sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, Kane.
Kia ora, everyone. So the first part of what I will discuss is our wellbeing program. So at the end of last year, December, we ran our second wellbeing survey across the organisation. The good news is we scored higher than the previous one, which was run 6 months earlier. And that's a good indication that the steps we are taking in the wellbeing space are being effective, and that the organisation is moving with those as well. Some of the key factors out of that, which were carried across from the first survey as well, were stress, fatigue and mental load of high importance to our staff. Obviously, there's quite a bit of work out there, and with the recent weather events, that will continue to compound. The questions are organised into different categories. One of the questions is around what people are actually doing to look after themselves, inside work and outside, and there were a lot of discussion around that. And one of the key important things is they're talking with their colleagues, both professionally and personally, and getting support from that network of people, because obviously they see them for a large part of their day. Things that they find important, their work-life balance, their family and their health, physical and mental, and so we will look at initiatives within the organisation that can support those areas. And then the want to sees, there's some, which is a free text area in the survey, which gives the organisation free will to what they would like to see across the organisation. And there was some great stuff there from health and safety basics like ergonomic assessments through to more wider ranging stuff like te reo training and diversity training. And that was also requested that there was a top-down program. So that's really good to see things like that out there in the organisation. Obviously, going back into the health and safety space, we have contractor management, which is a big program of work we have ongoing, and Q2 set up what's rolling into now, Q3. With site-wise, we have our contractors listed and ready to action that. There is a small metric in there around the initial brief of contractors that are currently in site-wise, and I think it's 39 out of 124 contractors, which is a reasonable chunk, and we'll work to get the rest of them into that program in the next quarter, maybe rolling on to the next one after that, depending how quickly they work with us. We're also undertaking a piece of work around our health and safety management system with WorkingWise, who supply our GOSH system, which is our reporting module, and that has just occurred in the last month across the organisation. So not reported here, but we'll follow on to the next report for how that's looking and what the program of work is that will come out of that around our processes and policy for health and safety and our cultural piece as well, to make sure everyone's doing what they should be doing and at the best possible standard. And thirdly is our health and safety culture, and that ties back into the GOSH work. we've got some some things in train that we want to follow through with in this coming quarter to improve our metrics around that as well.
Hey, Kane, do you want to talk about the audit outcome as well, the 5 audits?
Sure. So in the contractor space, we have created a template to do site audits on our contractors. That's been rolled out across the organisation through the roading team, the waters team, and facilities, who deal with quite a diverse range of contractors. The feedback on that is the template is of good use, but it needs to be more agile. So we're looking at ways we can supply that as an electronic form that uploads directly once they come back into the office. But following the results of that, there was no major changes to any of the works that were undertaken from our contractors. There were a couple of small issues which were highlighted and remedied. So it was a good, quick result.
So they were all doing toolboxes and hazard boards and that sort of thing.
Yeah, they were complying with it.
Okay. Any questions? Yep. Thank you, Councillor Biggs.
Hi, thanks, guys. Hey, on page 65, just with relating to comparison by category with the wellbeing survey, I understand the first 3 graphs, but I don't understand what the wellbeing survey is relating to program and relating to processes. What does that mean? Or what does it reflect?
Program and processes are what we are offering in the wellbeing space. So the initiatives that are
Like when you said today, they highlighted that they want that as a program.
Yep, but it's the ones we're currently operating at the moment as well. So that also includes the EVP that the staff get.
So that's their overall satisfaction with what is currently being done. And what about processes?
Processes is similar, but that is the accessibility to those things as well, and how we also around discussions around health and safety and team meetings, that sort of thing.
And the other thing I'd just like to add on to that is your participation is at 64%. I'm sure that you would like it to be higher. So do you have some processes in place to lift that?
Yes. The timing of the survey was December, wasn't it? It was. So that didn't help. We had a bit of survey fatigue, but we're hoping through the culture piece that we're doing around implementing the GOSH, which is our incident management system, that health and safety will be more front of mind. So these surveys will become more relevant because the outcomes of the surveys will really influence our work program, if that makes sense.
And how often are you going to do these?
6 monthly.
Thank you.
But we would like, obviously, would like as many as possible.
On that same graph.
Sorry?
I'm on
Oh, you
that
got the same question? Question on the same graph?
graph.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah. Is that all right, Councillor?
Yeah,
Holmes?
finished.
No, Councillor Holmes.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Holmes. Kane or Ben, the red and the blue, what's the difference? Is one the most recent, one the previous?
So the red is the most recent of the surveys run December. The blue is June survey.
And just in terms of so things are looking a bit better recently, which is good. In terms of staff well-being, just reading earlier in the report, or workload issues, what's the main thing? Is it the number of hours that have been worked, or the shortage of some key staff and worrying about how you're going to cope in those spaces, or is it community pressure? You know, what's the main thing that's causing that the need to put those statements?
My short answer will be yes.
So what is the main thing?
So there is a bit of all of that. Yeah. Obviously, with some roles being vacant for some time, there is added pressure on those teams that are down members. Hopefully, we now have a full complement of staff that can actually take up all that work And obviously, when you have vacancies, you have extra work pressures, which creates more volume. So that is a key highlight for staff, is resourcing and ability to get the work done.
So working beyond the normal call of duty in terms of number of hours worked. That the issue.
We don't have that data, but this is through verbal statements. Yeah, we have drilled. The surveys allows us to drill down a little bit further into business units and so forth, which we're doing, which does give us a bit more clarity of where the more critical potential risk is. So we're looking at that, but the areas from our initial view is where there are vacancies. That seems to be the key area, and then there's places. And like finance is an example, where there's pieces of work on at the moment, like annual report, and the amount of work that takes causes additional stress. So it's not just workload; it's the criticality of the work as well.
Appreciate get it done on time.
Get it right. Yeah.
Because it's kind of useful to know that if you some of those issues right.
Yeah, that's right. And to be fair, this is a common organisational risk. So we need to take it in some context as well around for a small organisation, but still need to take it seriously.
But I'm hearing that sort of compartmentalised right across.
It is a common piece of feedback we hear from leaders across the board, but I would say by the passion of some of the answers, you could tell the severity. So, for example, in the water space, is a real high pressure area at the moment and a resource, and the sort of feedback we get from that area is a lot more intense than say than some of the roading. So, yeah. Actually, I'm trying to think of one which is not, but yeah.
Okay, thanks.
If that makes sense.
Was a similar question on the graph, or because Councillor Holmes was actually?
Oh, are you still on the graph?
No, you're on the graph.
Oh, no, I'll move on to the next graph, but here we go.
Okay, Councillor
Around the graph, Stella, if it's okay. With the people asked, are they the same people? Because of if you look at well-being, for example, you've got 65% one year, 70% another year. If the bit in the middle of the Venn diagram is the same, but would it be really comparable data? Would it? What would it mean? So are they the same people answering those questions?
Well, I don't think
the same cohort.
Well, the validity of the tool means that it's completely confidential, right? So we don't know who's answered. So there's no way that we could do a direct comparison of people who responded to the first time, and we've also had people leave and start as well. So that is a consideration with the comparison, that it's a different people have answered.
Can I add my 2 pennies worth to the question? I don't care.
To the chart.
To the chart? No, but to your question on the chart, is it the same people? Doesn't matter to me. It's about the result for the whole organisation, right? Irrespective if it's the same people or not, right? The question I would have asked, how many people answered this compared with previously? You had 4 people answered at this time and you had 3 last time. I mean, bizarre. That, of me, is actually not a good metric.
I respectfully disagree. If you were comparing a cohort of students and you've got a different cohort, but you're measuring the same thing, it doesn't matter.
You're talking about learning. Here we're talking.
No, I'm talking about people.
Disagree, because here we're talking about the impact of health and well-being on the whole organisation. So it's a measure of the well-beingness of the whole organisation, not the well-being of specific individuals or a specific individual.
I see your point, but if it's 65%, it's 35% who aren't answering the question. And the 35% one year won't be the same as the 35% the next year. And if we haven't got that data, then it's not really comparable.
I understand what you're saying, Tim, but in regards to wellbeing surveys across all organisations, this is how it's done.
Yeah.
And there'd be no way we would be able to find that comparable data because of the confidentiality of the tool. And that's why people can answer it, is because we have no idea who's on the system. So otherwise we wouldn't be able to have comparable.
You can almost say the same though. We have a resident survey.
Yeah.
It's not the same residents every time, but we ask the same questions. We take that information and we say, here's our overall impression of our parks and recs.
Trend. Yeah.
Yes,
And
so
it's a trend analysis. And can I just also, the biggest concern I would have, right, and would be useful next time, is the number of people. Because to me, if you're saying if 100 people answered it, and we got 65%. So forget that. I'm going off track. Forget it. Talk myself out of it.
Unless the staff's increasing really fast.
Yeah.
Then it would be relevant.
Which it isn't.
Okay. All right. Number of percentages.
Mate.
Sorry?
Homes needs.
Homes.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I just had the annual of mine, annual leave.
Yeah.
It worries me, private business, I know you don't like accruing annual leave, and I'm so against it here.
Yeah.
I think we need to start at some stage to just confine it where they have to take their leave within the year. That's what we used to work on, and it worked. My operation was never as big as this.
Yeah.
But certainly it can be very expensive if someone accrues a lot of annual leave and they leave. It's very expensive. So I think we need to look at it. I agree with you. To me, is there needs to be some flexibility about when people take their leave in terms of banking it. But anyone that doesn't take their leave, in my opinion, within a set period of time, they need to have a strategy in place how they're going to use it. You're putting a bit more diplomatic than I would.
Yeah, and and that's my job probably half the time.
It's not as simple as saying you need to take your leave when you've got, real operational stress in certain areas. Yeah. So it's not as simple as saying, David, you need to take 4 weeks leave within the next 3 months. Yeah. It's a real workforce planning considerations. And so, it's a work in progress for us as SLT members. Yeah. It needs to be a really strategic and long-term approach to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Can I just give an example? And I don't know the numbers, right? David Paris might have 5 weeks of annual leave, right? Yeah, I'm being kind. So what you're asking David to do is to take 9 weeks in the next 12 months. Now, what does that do, David, if you had to take 9 weeks annual leave to your work program?
I can appreciate that.
Yeah, that's why I agree. But I agree, if David has got 10 weeks of leave plus his 5, this David needs a strategy to make sure that he actually uses it up and he just doesn't keep accumulating it.
To be honest, as a healthy organisation, all our people should be taking their full confidence leave, and that's where we need to get to.
Yep. Okay. I think this David has accepted it. Ben's accepted it. And I'm actually really pleased. If you look at the February how it's come down, but my concern is you, David, is that it actually doesn't go back up again. Right, we done annual leave.
Yep.
Except why is it always David Paris says the last 20 years has picked on to an example of
Mr. Councillor Goodwin, in fact, we had this discussion last meeting, and there was a staff member who I happen to know in the meeting, and she came up and mentioned, I should have said she, that person then came up and mentioned how much leave they had and expressed the difficulty about that person taking their leave. Right? And I understand that person's role because I did work for a council.
Just following on from annual leave, is there that option within council, I don't know, where you can actually cash out some and still take some? Is that something that we offer?
We can offer that through the through the Holidays Act, so that we can catch up to
Yeah.
up to 2 weeks.
Yeah, because sometimes people actually only want to take a certain amount of leave, but would relieve more stress if they actually just cashed up on something, you know, like different stresses, different people, different folks. The other thing I want to ask about is I don't know, and you know, there is a lot of talk about wellbeing stress, but is there an EAP service for you guys? There is. Is it, do you know if it's very well utilised within the staff?
We've been highlighting the utilisation of that for our staff and we've expanded their services as well a little bit.
Yeah.
So ease of access is there, it's known. That was one of the questions as well. Do you know where you go? It was an 80% yes, I know where it goes. So we'll work on that 20% to make sure everyone knows what they're doing, how to get that support. But yes, that is a utilised service.
We've seen usage probably go up about recently, about, you know, haven't got the percentage level of increases yet, but we think it's probably gone up around the 15% level, which is good.
What's the EAP?
It's
Employment assistance
yeah,
program.
former offering counsel, that sort of services. You've got to be careful with that metric. Now, I know a number of people in councils who've used it, and it was nothing to do with work. It was actually a family situation. So it's a nice metric, but you've got to be careful saying if you see EAP going up like this, it could have been other events such as flooding.
I dispute that though, because if you've got a family situation, I think it should work.
Oh, no, the cause of the issue wasn't. I totally agree. It does affect, and that's why it's there.
Yeah.
But the cause, so you can't actually blame the culture of the organisation.
Service may still have helped.
Don't disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Can I just say one thing about the survey? That's okay.
Everyone else has. Why not?
I suppose the actual richness of the survey that we got the most value out was actually the comments field. Yeah. That's the bit which actually was the biggest value for us, rather than the numbers. Makes sense. So that's the real value of the survey, to be honest.
Maybe you should share that.
Yeah. I've got some couple other rather technical questions on the contractors, and I've got some ideas. Maybe you and I have an offline discussion, because I've seen some other results from other councils that you might find useful.
That would be wonderful.
Any other discussions on this report? I mean, I think, you know, go for it, Tim. I mean, health and safety and well-being is a top risk that we should be drilling down into as governors.
Just talking about at the beginning, Ben, you talked about building more capability to the bench, and you going to tell us how you're doing that? What's happening?
So there's a number of things we're looking at doing. We're looking at our technical bench strength, in particular the areas, you know, where they require technical expertise. So we're looking at our technical leadership pathway, and how do we build capability within the business. So that's around supporting leaders to have good conversations with their people around how do we build some additional technical, so that's through training and so forth. So we're focusing on that. At an SLT level, we'll be looking at specific succession planning. So to minimise risk, and again, that's identifying individuals across the business who could fill gaps when we need them. And I've talked about the build, borrow, and buy strategies. So that's the build type strategy, where we build capability within the business. The area where we need to do more work in is the borrow side of the strategy, which is how do we use resources across groups, and that's something that we'll be doing more of, but there's more opportunity to do that, and we do it organically, like in Karen's space. Her team does a lot of work in supporting report writing and that sort of stuff in our operational areas, which allows our technical people to training their peers and so forth. So to do really good bench strength stuff, you need to be able to spare capacity with these technical people so they can pass information on to, and so that we can do that through corporate overhead, if that makes sense. By trying to take work off people. It is difficult in an organisation our size. We're always going to have risk, so that's why you have sort of a buy strategy as well, where if you've got a single point of failure, you know, one of your mitigations potentially is the contract resource out in the market coming in a short-term type basis. So we need to be able to identify that early rather than be chasing our tails when we do have a capability gap. So there's sort of three sort of pillars of strategic that we're trying to do. It's not, you know, the build stuff is the long term, is a bit more medium to long term strategy. The buy and borrow we're trying to do now. I'd love to be able to say that within the last 6 months our bench has got incredibly stronger, but I don't think we're there yet. Work to do. Thank you, Ben. I hope that answers your question. It did sound very jarring.
Any more questions, Tom?
Yeah, just a quick one. Down on page 72, health and safety culture. Good to see you implementing a new system, replacing your old appraisal system. Talk about your 4 competencies, core competencies, one big health and safety. Is that right? A competency and goal achievement approach to performance management, or whatever your term is. Just wonder what the other 3 competencies are.
Yeah, so the new we're calling it, we've moved away from a competency framework to more of a goal and development sort of framework, which has competencies as the sort of the key conversation points. So we want leaders and employees to set goals around competencies. We have, and we're in the process of rolling this out. We've done a pilot in our libraries area. So we've created 8 competencies for 8 different job families, if that makes sense. So if you're a technical person, you have 8 competencies. If you're a advisor, you have 8. If you're a manager, you have 8. But there's 4 that go across all those groups, and the 4 are health and safety, communication. I think the other 2 are customer service and I think it's professionalism or something like that. I can send them to you if you like. Don't quote me on those 4. I think I might have got one.
That's okay.
As your competency.
My memory competency probably.
I thought this was part of his competency, the quizzing.
It's on my development plan.
So Ben, just to get that clear, so it's a system based around demonstrating competencies or growth and competence, but nothing really about meeting goals.
So as I said, we're still rolling out, and we're in consultation with PSA on the final format on that, because it was a project that was agreed at the last collective bargaining. So we're still in consultation, but the idea is it's not. The idea is the competency side of things is not so much an assessment process, but more a conversational ability for leaders and employees to sit down and say, okay, what do you need to be good at, to be competent in your role? And then from there, setting goals, which are measurable, smart, measurable goals. So it's not about a coaching approach, but there is absolutely an accountability area there as well. It's I know I talk about growth culture, but part of that is also relating to ensuring people are performing their roles, right?
So that's quite new. It's going to take a bit of time to.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
It's a journey.
Right, any other questions, comments? Thank you. So we've got a recommendation on page 64. Do I have a mover? Thank you, councillor Holmes. Seconded. Oh, Tom, thank you. All those in favour, any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Next item is our Building Consent Authority risk mitigation. Mr. May, welcome.
Welcome.
Take your report as read.
And,
any highlights?
Through the chair, firstly, can I just credit that report to Stephen Williams as our Building Control Authority manager, highly experienced and is actually away today at another council doing an audit. So he's put this together and very extensive. Just the background to building assessment in New Zealand. What I can say is, in my experience across a number of councils, the fact that councils are the last person standing in a dispute means that we often are the ones that are partially sued. Sometimes buildings are constructed and it's not till 10 years later that there's a fault that's developed or identified, and by that stage a lot of the builders or architects or whoever service providers may have closed or gone bankrupt or whatever. So when the plaintiffs are looking around, the only entity that is left is council, and that's why council unfortunately has to undergo litigation with participants. So there's obviously a couple of notations there of some one of the larger litigations across New Zealand that's occurred. What I can say is through that report you can also see a consistent improvement to regulatory and professional capacity building towards excellence. And a building inspector today is very much different from one, say, 20 years ago. So I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Questions? No.
I just want to say I found the report really helpful. 409, didn't realise the history attached to that all. I thought that was.
So yeah, credit to Stephen Williams.
Building Consents 101. Thank you.
And the risks associated with it, assuming. Yep. Tom?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the report, Stephen. Just going back to your comment that council's been the last person standing. Does that mean council don't have to take responsibility for any of this risk mitigation in your view?
Not at all. If there's fault committed by council and that can be proven, a fault in process, the procedure, certainly, I mean, we will be there. The council will be fairly there. What happens sometimes is that there was a push to accept certificates of compliance and completion from the professionals in their field. Someone that's put your roof on, they will give you a certificate of compliance. Rather than inspecting that, we will take them on their word because they are a professional. 2 years later, 5 years later, they'll find out that the roof was installed incorrectly. That building or that roofer has now gone out of business. And then in order to speed up regulations and cut on red tape, which we're doing by accepting people's their word, their professional word, we are then left to say, well, actually, you didn't re-inspect that. You took that person's word. On the minor occasions, there's some great builders out there, great professionals out there, but on the minor occasion, those things happen, and then council is the one that's approved that. And then, if there is a liability or a claim, then proportionally, councils. The court will look at the proportion of involvement of the council in that, whether it's 100% liability or 20% liability.
Can I just clarify that? If the builder's gone out of business and there was a 50% council and 50%, make it easier in my brain, build a mistake, but the builder's gone, the court can, because it's we're even say in the report, we're jointly and severally liable, we've got to pay 100%. And I can quote you a case that's currently happening now. It's a well-known BNZ versus Wellington City, where the building fell down on the waterfront. Council relied on Beckers. And Becker says, no, 10 years up, our limitations said we can't be joined. However, the court overruled their actual claim to say, no, we're joining you to whatever the reason was. But that's the approach a lot of people take. I've seen a council be liable where they relied on an organisation, or name the council or the organisation, because so they had an organisation built a building. They relied on another organisation to be the designer and quality controller for them. That contract had a statute of limitations of 5 years and a maximum liability of X. Building failed through design and supervision by that organisation, but because of that contract between the building owner and the designer supervisor, council couldn't join them. It cost the council millions of dollars. So that's the risk that as a building control authority we are taking on.
So I guess looking at your new processes here, just compliments to you and your team and council for and for the work you're doing in that space. I guess the question for me is, if the council's faced a bit of litigation, some ongoing litigation currently, do you think these procedures are enough to sort of protect us going forward? And in light of what Phil's just said?
There would still need to be changes to national legislation that would make councils, in the scheme of things, proportionally liable if these these aren't around. So we can only do as much as we can do. Each building control officer has to have Regulation 18, which is a tertiary qualification now, and each year they have their competency assessed by an independent person. So to say, if you're a building inspector, you may only do residential, and you want to do commercial, then that's another step up, and then you've got to partner with people. So also the government a few years ago brought in the licensed building practitioner scheme, which is to train the builders under their scheme to increase their professionalism. So that's one example of the government looking at both sides of the equation.
Is one of the risks that we as a council face is that engineers to approve stuff, but nobody to approve the engineers, and the engineers get it wrong, fingers tend to point back at council. And have we got mechanisms in place to cover those sorts of situations?
Depending on the size of the council, larger councils have their own engineers and they will sign off plans on behalf of the developer. For a smaller councils like ourselves, we don't have that in situ. So when a developer comes to us and something's been signed off by their engineer, we then go out for a peer review because we need a peer review of that that engineer's.
We have a peer review on that peer review. It's because our engineer gets it wrong.
Well, we go out to the market and get as a professional qualified engineer who may have a focus in that type of construction. And then, how long do you go for it? Great cost. We actually then believe that engineer has a peer review correctly, professionally, under their oath that work is sound.
Yeah, I think it will come at costs, which the building property owner has to wear. So it's really important that we take an appropriate measure on minimising our risk and having the systems in place to identify where risks are when we need to do more peer reviews, because it all comes at a price.
Yes.
And it all comes at more resource. But certainly over the years, the bar has raised in the space, both legally and with the capacity of our organisation to actually make sure that we catch these things. I agree it comes at a price, but the price is never as much as if we get it wrong. Yep.
Yeah.
But we can't just keep loading peer review on peer review on peer review. No, I accept that, but have we got systems in place that mitigate some of the risks we've seen already and some of the litigation we've seen already? My question.
So we're working within the legislation and regulations of New Zealand Building Act, and like I said, with the LBP scheme, we're relying on those professional buildings to be licensed. If we want changes, it has to then come from the actual central government.
The report also indicates we've been audited. Yeah, we've been identified as a low risk council for our systems. That gives me a lot of reassurance that the procedures we've got in place and that those are pretty robust audits. Stephen will, so that gives me confidence. We're doing a lot of things should give you as well. I guess, is there anything as a council we can do to share our concerns with central government? You know, one of my understandings is that an engineer might have $100,000 liability on a $4 or $5 million project, and engineer gets it wrong, and it's a small cost to the engineer, but a huge cost to the council. And I think we should be challenging those sorts of standards.
And certainly unfortunately, after tragic events like Christchurch earthquake, where the engineering fraternity were looked at, changes were made on it. And I mean, that's really bad because it's after the fact, but often there isn't until there's a tragedy that you realise that process needs improvement.
Yep. But we're in a better space now, the new processes and the.
But is that council always end up liable? I was always staggered that the CTV building, that Christchurch City Council never seems to be mentioned. But I might have missed it.
I think they were looking, it was actually the Christchurch City, I understand, Mr. May, that actually was put through the ringer in terms of some of their processes. There was actually, I think the families were looking for someone to blame, and they couldn't actually find someone to actually one person to blame.
That Ray or whatever his name was, being here was certainly named.
Yeah, but no action was taken. And I think that's what the family was looking at. And just any other questions? I think just reinforcing what the chief executive said. You know, I see 1 or 2 of these reports a year as part of my, and I think that the fact that we've only got 12 general non-compliance, and you say, well, that looks bad. Mr. May, do you want to talk about the level of non-compliance that potentially council have actually got? So, you know, I mean, particularly for those who haven't seen one of these before.
So a number of years ago, when the International Accreditation New Zealand, which is a firm of internationally accredited auditors, they also do food auditing and health auditing. So they come into a council generally every 2 years, unless the council requires some assistance, and they come in every 6 months, or 6 months and 6 months to review the changes. So when irons used to come in a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, it used to be called a CAR, Corrective Action Report. And those CARs, you may have one CAR, but underneath might be 3 or 4 different parts of the process improvement. When they changed to this new system and called it, GNCs, General Non-Compliance, the industry wanted to actually be more transparent so that they would give you a general non-compliance for every item that they found needed improvement. So you may have had a BCA that had 5 cars under the old regime. Under the new regime, that might be 20. Was they wanted to moderate across New Zealand that some auditors may be a bit more firmer in that area. And as an industry, as New Zealand industry, we actually want to see what are the general faults that are across New Zealand, and we can't do that if cars are not reflecting the full. So so when we do get 12 general non-compliances, I actually welcome it, because it's actually like taking your car for a warrant. You don't know your left tire's got a missing a tread. And so to me, it's, you know, we welcome that feedback. We have a certain amount of time to get back to IONS, which we've done and said, you've given us this report to say where we can improve on. This is our plan to improve on it within this 2 month or 3 month timeframe. They've just approved that. So we've got that time to highlight our improvements and go back to them and provide evidence, proof that we've fixed our tie.
Can I just also think, isn't there a significant non-compliance? Isn't there one above a general one?
Yeah.
That's where I was heading.
Sorry, yeah.
Right? It's saying is, rather than using the warrant of fitness example, that your wiper's not up to speed, you need to go and get it fixed. Your car is actually not roadworthy.
We're taking your car off the road.
Yes. I mean, or you can actually get something that is, look, this is major, right? Your car is safe to drive. You can go and get it fixed. That's what a general compliance is. But this is something, look, you need to go and get it fixed now, like straight away, because it's so major.
And many years ago, again, 10 years ago, the same entity, IONS, went into the Christchurch. Don't know the background, but they said that your performance of your team is not up to a certain level. So they then appointed a commissioner, an independent commissioner, to go in there and they improved their systems and took them a couple of years. So we have that. That's actually a good regulator to have on your shoulder because they are there to ensure that councils are performing.
And also the issue is if you get a number of significant non-compliances, they will give you, basically you've got to get your organisation fixed in 6 months. And if you don't, then we're taking your authority to be a building control authority off you as a council. So it's the ramifications of getting this wrong for council are significant.
And we've got a very highly skilled building control unit, a mixture of ages, youth, passion. So we're in pretty good stead.
All right, thank you. Good report. Do I have a mover for the recommendation on page 76? You, Councillor Holmes, you're the second. You speak. Okay, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. Can I have a mover to move into public excluded? I'll move. Councillor Biggs will second, and we will stop recording.